matter the crop, be it tomatoes, be it the capsicum, be it the chilies, my message has always been on the agribusiness point of the farming bit of it. Because a lot of people, not even a lot of people, actually anyone now in Kenya is getting into farming. The number one thing that is normally in their mind is on profit generation. But the thing that they normally forget is for you to get to make that profit at the farm, you have to have a very keen knowledge, keen interest. You have to have a very good knowledge. You have to have that expert point of view of it. And that is what we call agriculture. I'll be taking you to the greenhouses where we have done our production and also where we are trying to fulfill a number of strategies. And some of these strategies I'll be showing to you something like consistency in production. Most farmers miss on consistency, and it's a strategy we are trying out here. So far so good, it's working for us well. Karibuni, let's go to the greenhouses, you see our produce. When we look at crops are normally differentiated depending on variety. When we come to capsicums belong to a family we call the solanaceous crops, where we have the tomatoes, the chilies, the manago, all in the same family. When we come to white capsicums, the indeterminate variety now that we do in the greenhouse, why they can't be done in the open field, number one reason is on quality. And the reason is we look now into pollination. If you try and do the colored capsicum, I'll give you an example, the yellow, the red that are more popular in the market. When you try and do them in the open field with the green ones, there'll be a lot of challenges on the pollination aspect of it. It will come the time when you are harvesting, you are going to harvest your yellow, you find it has different shades of color because of different pollinating agents. You'll find your yellow looking almost like a rainbow, and when it comes to the market, nobody will be able to. It comes to farming. Farming is, we divide farming into two ways. There's agriculture and there's agribusiness. What has happened over time, most people tend to confuse in between the two. Much as they are related, there's a big difference between them. When you look at agriculture, even a simple explanation, a simple definition, normally talks about the rearing of crops or animals at the farm. Then when we talk about agribusiness now talks about turning these crops or these animals into some sort of income or profit for yourself at the farm. And before you get to that agriculture and before you get to that agribusiness, for you to be successful into farming, you have to differentiate between the two of them. You have to perfect in each of them. You have to know, what do I want to do? Which crop do I want to do? Which crop do I want to grow? And why do I want to grow it? Capsicums are among those crops that make sense. You don't need such a big space of land for you to realize any meaningful profit. Just a small area is enough. But at the same time, when you look at which variety of capsicums are we talking about, the colored and the green capsicums tend to be different. The green capsicums, again, share a totally different agribusiness mathematics from the colored one. For the green ones, you need at least half an acre for you to realize any meaningful profit. But for this colored capsicum, like this greenhouse that we are inside here, it's an 8 by 30 greenhouse. And when you do the calculation of 8 by 30 is about 240 meters squared. That is about 20 times less of half an acre. So there's that difference. You have to think about the size of land I have, what crop do I want to grow, which crop will make me realize more profit margins. Soil test is very important, and most farmers dismiss it on different angles. And the most excuses that farmers have always been telling me, number one is, I know this land, my soil is very fertile. Then the other one is, soil test is very expensive. And that is the first thing. When you do a chemical analysis of our soil, that is the first thing that you are supposed to check for. What is just simply something we define as acidity or the alkalinity of a substance. The same way for a soil, it's the acidity of that soil or the alkalinity of that soil. Most food crops, be it the capsicum, be it the cabbages, be it the wort, require a certain acidity, and they prefer a range between 5.5 to a 7.0. And if your soil is acidic, the crop is unable to grow its root. You know, acid burns, kunele tunaita kuchoma choma. And root, we compare the root more of something like the hand of a crop. It's the one that reaches out for food. So as this root tries to reaches out for food, gets that acidic environment, doesn't extend. It's unable to absorb the most important nutrients. Then number two, you are able to look, when you do a soil test, you are able to know how is my nutrient composition. You are able to do a soil test. You are able to see them. We have the macronutrients, we have the micronutrients. The most important elements, and those, yes, they are important, but not that essential, but still important for the crop. We have the NPK, nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium. Nitrogen is the first nitrogen, is what we need for, if you look at this, the foliage, the vegetative growth aspect of it. Potassium is what we need for something like this flowering, needs potassium. Phosphorus is what we need for the root formation. So the number one thing after farmers done their soil test and be able to see the components, how in terms of percentage, how they are: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. I'll give you an example of this farm. The nitrogen was low, the phosphorus was low, the potassium was okay. If we had grown our crops without doing a soil test, it means the phosphorus that is needed for root formation that is not enough would have affected the root growth of our crops. The roots won't have established themselves well. We'll face an issue on, for example, the crop establishment. Would have had a lot of issues in terms of crops not just catching up well, crops dying. You're wondering what is happening. But after knowing that, we were able to correct it. We were able to grow our crops using a phosphorus-based fertilizer. Then another thing, this is black cotton. We have black cotton soil here, and there are those characteristics of soils. Black to have low nitrogen component. And that's why even when you observe, even those farmers that who happen to be our viewers today, and they tend to have black cotton soil, and they walk around their farm, they'll be able to see most of their crops, even the weeds, the grass, they tend not to have this deep green color. They have some shades of yellow. And when you have shades of yellow on your leaves, the first thing that is normally affected is photosynthesis. When a crop is yellow, it means that green coloring matter, that chlorophyll, is already affected. And when the food is not made well by that crop, definitely you don't expect your produce to be well. Then the last one, potassium. Potassium is needed for now the flowering and the fruit set. When your potassium, if you do a soil test and you are able to see your potassium is low, like for our case, if our potassium is okay, but had we done and saw our potassium is low, there are those correction measures we would have taken. We would have used foliar feeds, we would have used products that are fertilizers that have some potassium rich, and be able to just make sure the crop doesn't lack anything. If you find your soil is acidic, do some liming by the recommended quantities.
Again viewers, this was Capsicum Propagation brought to you by Kiprotich of Bara Bora Farms.